I think this is where the rubber hits the road. I mean, you guys, the school board, are the ones who are responsible for setting the tone along with the administration for the schools and enacting the policies. So I have a good state level perspective, but making things work in the building and making things work in the district is an entirely different set of challenges. And it's one area that I'm very interested in contributing to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Mr. Fry, the first question is yours.
Well, we'll start very basic. What do you believe the purpose of public education is, and why is it important to our community?
Well, really two questions in a way. If you go back to some of the founders like Horace Mann, and why were they building public education, it was really based on two premises. The first premise is to provide opportunity for folks to get ahead. So there's a belief in equal opportunity that infuses the spirit of education. And analogous to that is the idea of assimilating people from different cultures to create a shared culture, to create a shared sense of civic purpose and democratic values. I do think that public schools are very much the heart of a community, and that you have schools that reflect the social status of the communities in which they reside to a significant extent. And the more we can make public education thrive within any given community, the more we can attract families, the more businesses are going to come in, the more real estate values go up. They're very real tangible effects that can be measured, and research has been done on this that show about the economic benefits of a healthy and vibrant school system. So there are both philosophical and cultural reasons, but there's also some real return for the community. And plus, it's just nice to have a community center, isn't it? Rather than everybody feeling isolated, to be able to bring folks together on a Friday night and have some shared values and fun that way.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
I don't, but
No.
Can other people have one?
Not on your
Not on my question?
Only you on your question.
No, it was
your special question.
It was a thorough answer. Thank you.
The second question is mine. What do you perceive to be the roles of the district administrator, the Board of Education, and the individual members of the board?
Well, to set the policies and the tone for the district. Really, it's a governance issue is what we're talking about here. And so that includes policies that you want the school to follow. It includes matters of curriculum. It includes, to me, very importantly, is a school cultural issue. How do the kids feel? How do the teachers feel? And is everybody on the same page? So you have to identify policies that the district may need because of conditions on the ground, issues that may need to be addressed, and you have to identify potentially ways to help move us forward in different directions or new directions that could help build the program here. So it's really a matter of setting the tone and working together and collaborating to get a good governance structure in place. And I believe strongly, as I mentioned before, in collaboration and shared decision making along those lines.
Just to follow up briefly, you had mentioned curriculum. What do you see the board's role in curriculum as being?
Well, I'll bring up one specific item, which is computer coding, which a lot of people are talking about as being the new foreign language and essential for any graduates to have. And there are possibilities today with distance learning and bringing folks in-house here to begin providing that to students. And that might be a real advantage for student graduates. It might be an advantage that then gets more known around the region where other students might transfer in. So between distance learning or having a first-rate program in the building here, that's just one example of a new opportunity.
Thank you. The next question is Mr. Coughlin's.
What are some qualities of an effective school board member, and how do you believe you have exemplified these in your previous experiences?
Well, I think anytime you work in a group, you have to be willing to listen to people, and you have to respect other people's ideas. And then it helps if somehow you can also synthesize what's being said and try and find that common ground. A lot of the work that I've done with groups, that's sometimes the hard piece. And I attempted to suggest that I have done that successfully with these different Learning Coalition, Wisconsin Public Education Network. They bring people together for some shared understandings about what we want to accomplish, how we can move forward together. So I think also, you know, you have to have some basic mastery of the facts, right? I mean, these are complex issues that we're dealing with. So we have to make sure that folks are coming with an appropriate fact base, so the decisions that can be made are appropriate. So in those three ways, I think, can be an asset, hopefully, for this board.
And you've spoken a couple times about setting the tone of the district. Can you elaborate on what aspects of the functioning of the school district you feel fall underneath tone?
I can't, because I'm not on the ground here in this district. My girls all graduated from O'Keefe and East High, and so you have to know what you're talking about before you can make any kinds of decision. You have to engage in a fact-finding process. I just happen to think in general that the way we operate with one another, the way we operate with colleagues, with the administration, with staff, is part of setting a tone, a collaborative effort within the school in general, but I don't have specific comments about what's going on here that way.
Thank you.
The next question is Ms. Swords.
Thank you for coming. Do you believe the Stoughton Area School District could be doing more to significantly improve our education quality? If so, what should we do and why?
Well, you know, we've seen about 400 kids decline in enrollment in the last decade. I was looking at that before I came over. And some of that's just natural demographics. And so you do need to think about how to keep a vibrant system going. So the one idea I mentioned to Mr. Sullivan around coding, I think would resonate with a lot of parents in the area if we can put a first grade program in place there. You know, I know you all are really good about some apprenticeship type of programs, career type opportunities for children. I think that's an important component of it. But another component also kind of gets to this cultural issue, which is there's a whole new, it's almost a fad, but I think it's much more important than that, called social and emotional learning. There's actually a center at the UW, the Center for Healthy Minds, that's a leader in developing some curriculum around this issue. And that might be something to contemplate in the elementary schools in particular. It helps kids be reflective about why they're saying things or why they're acting in a certain way. Sort of the jargon around that is mindfulness. But there's also prescriptive curriculum measures that you can introduce in the classroom. And I think if something like that were done well, which it could be, could bring in experts, that again would be something that would resonate with a lot of families. Because, you know, one of the knocks on schools and some of the behaviors, quite frankly, let's just be honest about that, everywhere, right? It's everywhere. I work for the teachers union, and I hear that from the teachers all the time. And so I think anything we can do as adults to help give the kids the skill sets that they need to navigate and to mitigate that kind of environment and to improve that environment is really important work. And it's also the work of a democratic process. If you think about it, how do we get along with one another where we've got folks in different walks of life? Really ought to be an integral part, I think, of a healthy educational system.
Thank you.
Do you have any follow-up?
I do not.
Mr. Jackson, the next question is yours.
Sure. What priorities should guide the board's actions as fiscal pressure impacts our facilities, staffing, and programming?
I'm sorry, I missed the very first
Sure.
part of that.
What priorities,
What priorities?
yep, should guide the board's actions as fiscal pressures impact our facilities, staffing, and programming? So it's
Okay,
It's a
thanks.
tough one.
That's a good, easy one.
We're hoping you'll tell us.
Yeah.
I'll write it down.
Well, you know, my oldest daughter teaches, I was just talking to her about that. It's difficult because everybody's concerned about wanting to have a good system. And how do you measure that? How do you define that? What does that look like? And we're spending a lot of money statewide, nationally, I don't know specifically in your district, on all sorts of assessments, on all sorts of data tracking systems, on all sorts of reports, on all sorts of consultants. Now, some of that is important because you need outside eyes and you need objective observers. But I wonder sometimes if we aren't overwhelming ourselves with too much information and data. What if we took, whatever, 40, 50% of all those resources and we spent them directly to help the kids who we've identified most need that help? And I mean that one-on-one in terms of tutoring. Child doesn't know how to read the way I think. Let's get those kids tutors. Let's help them read. I don't need to hire a consultant. Maybe we need to find out the best reading program to help that kid, absolutely. But I don't think we need to be spending money on more assessments, more data tracking systems, and all of this periphery around the educational process. What is education? It's the day-to-day classroom experience of that kid. And I think that to a certain extent, we're misdirected in a lot of our thinking and a lot of our focus, whereas to me, I would really like to get it back to being child-centered. The resources, the actions we take are directed. If that child needs a few extra hours, let's provide them with that. If they need a tutor, let's provide them with that. If we need to get a specialist to work on a special reading program, let's get them that. To me, there's no better use of resources than lifting all those kids up, as many as we can.
So would the challenge be reforming the mandates that require the district to do the certain assessments and testing and reporting and data gathering? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I don't know the extent to which there are additional assessments that may be going on in this district. A lot of districts run additional assessments. I do think there's room for discussion and collaboration with other school districts in the region and with DPI. There's some flexibility on the new federal legislation, the ESSA legislation that replaced the ESEA, or so-called No Child Left Behind, for more latitude and for more work in those kinds of areas, especially around community involvement and community engagement. So I do think there is room for discussion there and opportunities for change. I realize as a single district we can't wave a magic wand and make the requirements go away, but I do think we can begin that discussion and look internally to see what we might be able to do first, irrespective of what happens at the state level, and begin discussions at the state level at the same time.
Thanks.
Ms. Hoppy?
Thanks for being here, Jeff. My question concerns how people see our district. If a family was thinking of moving to Stoughton and were to ask you whether or not they should enroll their children in our district, how would you respond?
Well, I think there's a lot of pride here. There's a lot of identity here. And I'm probably not as conversant with the particular programs that I might be. I know that there's some good sports teams, which is always very positive. But I believe that there are a number of apprenticeship programs, aren't there, in this school that going on that way. So I think, and it's, you know, the facilities here where my kids went to Lowell Elementary School, and the playground was concrete about as big as this room. And so you look at the fields and facilities that you have. These are attractive amenities for kids to thrive in, and that would attract parents. So I think there's a lot of positive things about the community as well, which obviously is part of the educational experience. But Kathy, I should have maybe looked more at the curriculum. Like we could say that there's this many AP courses that are being offered, or these kinds of special programs that are going on. But I think we could work up a pretty nice one-page brochure and to do a good job to advertise the district beyond what I've been able to mention right here.
Do you have any follow-up? Ms. Fitzgibbon, the last question is yours.
Sure. Stand Constantine, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
What are the challenges that you think the Stoughton Area School District is facing right now, and what do you propose that we can do to face those challenges?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of them we talked about a bit already, which is the declining enrollment. And I do think that innovative programs and trying to brand the district a little more regionally is a potential strategy to help that way. The other issue is a larger issue, which is that, you all actually got, and this is true for most school districts, it's not unique to Stoughton, but received less state aid this year than you did way back in 06, 07. So in the decade between 06, 07 and actually I can go back to 16, 17, you're getting less state aid. And I think that's a very important factor. Now, you all did a great job, you're very successful. You got a referendum passed in 2014-15. It's a recurring referendum, which means it doesn't stop in time. Most districts are only able to pass what's called a non-recurring referendum, which means it's limited in time. And this is a recurring referendum, which brings additional resources to the school district. So Stoughton's actually able to spend slightly more than the statewide average per pupil because of the work that the community did. So there's, going back to Kathleen's question, there's a lot of community support for the schools here. And that's a positive thing, when people are working away on it. And this is another way to invite parents in, and proof of it is a successful referendum. Trying to find ways to attract more students, families into the district with some innovative programs, but also, again, to the extent we can work in coalition with some of the surrounding school districts and others statewide. I think there's, a blue ribbon commission going on right now at the state level that's looking at school funding. I don't know if anything's going to come of that or not prior to the election, but I do believe that in the next 2 years, there's a real opportunity for folks. Let's take special education, for example. The state used to fund over 40% of that and dropped about 30-some-odd%. Now today, they're funding 26% of it. Well, you know where that's coming out of. The difference between 44 and the 26 is coming out of the regular operating budget. That's the budget where we could be providing opportunities for all kids and new and innovative programs. So that state funding, I think, is a hugely important foundation for all public schools, and that if we're willing to come together in terms of what we think would best help this district and work on that agenda with other surrounding districts, maybe, again, in terms of regional sort of coordination or coalition, that might be something that would interest parents in getting involved with, but also in a very material and real sense, provide a better foundational support for the school here, which is something that all public schools need in the state.
Do you have any follow-up?
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the questions. You now have about 5 minutes for a closing statement. We do thank you very much for your interest, and thank you for coming. And know that you certainly have other things to do this evening besides be here.
Well, actually, Frank, I don't.
You don't? You're as bad as us. But we're grateful for your interest, and we're grateful that you took the time to come and talk to us.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and my wife and I have been here for 9 years now. I moved away from the east side of Madison because I wanted a little more elbow room on the old farmhouse over on Lake Caganza Road in Rutland Township. The more I bump around the town, and the more people I meet, the more I love the civic spirit of this community and the way people want to work together and get things done. And that's very much my mind and where I come from, and I think that there's a lot of potential opportunity here, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you to advance that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
all the lights go out there. What about the mic from the podium? Would that one stretch over there?
Got it.
Oh, wow.
Can't help it. Yawning.
And I yawn.
I've had a hard May. She's always cold.
Get your trash can to our.
Yeah, there's the hot seat. I'd like to introduce Jill Patterson. Jill, there's the hot seat.
Hi, we're the school board.
Hello, school board.
Hello.
So here's how this works. We have about a half hour slotted for you. So we give you up to 5 minutes to make an opening statement. You tell us whatever you want to tell us. After that, each board member will go around the room. Each board member is going to ask a question.
Okay.
We ask the same questions of all three candidates. We've got about 20 minutes allotted for that. Then we give you about 5 minutes at the end to say anything else you want to say. If you're not, if you have anything else to say at that
Okay.
point. And then after it's done, we will, after we've interviewed all three candidates, we will take a vote and seat the lucky winner immediately.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to start the timer, and I'll tell you when you've got about a minute left.
Okay.
So,
All right. So let's see. My background is I was raised in central Wisconsin. I'm one of 3 children. I'm the oldest child. We were sort of a lower middle class family, and we're all very hardworking. My siblings are entrepreneurs, very successful. My sister retired from Physicians Plus Insurance. My brother runs his own company. I have always been very busy. I've worked for the company that I work for now for almost 22 years, and I've been telecommuting for the last 8. So they have been paying me to hang out in my house and do my job for 8 years without direct supervision, and I do that. Lots of deadlines. I do deadline-based work, which is fast-paced and requires a lot of focus and, yes, organization. I have 2 boys, and their names are Marshall and Colton. One is in Fox Prairie. He's in 1st grade, and he has Mrs. Sisler, who is a joy of a teacher. My older boy, Colton, is in River Bluff Middle School in red block, although he has some yellow block classes, so we've kind of been toggling that line of 2 blocks. I'm never really quite sure when he's red block and when he's yellow block, but he knows, so we're all good there. Let's see. My husband and I met when I was working in Seattle. I lived there for 15 years before we relocated here. It's a beautiful place, but Stoughton is fantastic. I really like the town. It's been great. It's got a lot of community engagement. I've been volunteering at the Opera House most recently. I did tours of the Opera House on Saturday for Setnam I, and I've been sort of arm twisted into doing this every year now because apparently I did a good job. So let's see, what else? In my spare time, I paint rocks and hide them around town for kids to find.
Oh, you are the one.
Yes.
I found one.
Did you? Let's see, I don't know. I don't know that I need the full 5 minutes.
that's all right. We don't
Okay.
mind at all. The first question is Mr. Fries. Go ahead.
Thank you for coming. What do you believe the purpose of public education is, and why is it important to our community?
I would say that the purpose is to prepare our children to be good citizens, and public education especially has a diversity component that you wouldn't find in a private school education. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of public school education, especially in a community where there isn't a lot of diversity and the private school options are focused mostly around a religious ethos. The world that we live in is diverse and it's filled with all sorts of people, and so our public schools should reflect that same type of community.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, Joe?
I do not.
The next question is mine. What do you perceive the roles of the district administrator, the Board of Education, and the individual members of the board to be?
Well, I would say that the district administrator's position is probably more of a day-to-day, month-to-month, hands-on, directing, and the board's position is probably more of a strategic position, a bigger picture position, working as a group to define objectives and overall goals for the district, working with the district administrator to do those things, and staying out of the day-to-day and the minutia. I would say as a member of the board, my job would be just to listen at this point because I haven't been involved in a lot of the decisions that have happened up to now, and asking questions and then voting for a result that would be in the best interest of all the students in our district.
Thank you. The next question is Mr. Coughlin's.
Thanks for coming. What are some qualities of an effective board member, and how do you feel you've exemplified these in your previous experiences?
I would say that a good board member would be a good listener, somebody who considers all the options, who isn't wedded to one particular perspective, who is a good communicator, who likes to ask questions and find out more information before making a decision, who is able to work as a good team player. I personally feel like I do a good job of building consensus between people who are at opposing viewpoints, and I do a lot of, in my job now, I do a lot of, well, what he's really saying is this, does that make sense to you? Because I think a lot of communication problems stem from people having different communication styles, so they don't understand each other, they're not actually opposed to each other.
Can a follow-up question address the letter that you originally posted to the school board?
Sure.
Can you speak a little bit then about the time that you spent on the board of Pumpkin Patch, right? Mm-hmm. And how you think that may compare to an experience on this school board?
The board of Pumpkin Patch was a lot of, well, it was when I was on the board the second year, it was an all-female board. Some of those women had close friendships outside of school, like personal friendships, their kids played together. I had friendships that were developing with some of those board members, but I think that experience taught me that it's very important to separate the business of making good decisions for the school from the business of your friendship with someone else. And I think that I'm very proud of the fact that I did not lose friends from that experience, and I didn't necessarily develop like super close friendships, but I do have a lot of friendships from that experience still, and it was an interesting experience to try and help 8 women figure out how to get to the same place. And when we voted, every vote that we had was a unanimous vote. So it took us a lot of questioning and discussion sometimes, but it was well done, I think, good work to get to a place where everyone could feel good about the decision that we made.
Thank you.
Ms. Sword, the next question is yours.
Hi.
Hi. Your son went to Pumpkin Patch with my son.
I was wondering about that.
Yes.
That's what I thought. So do you believe that the Stoughton Area School District could be doing more to significantly improve the quality of the education we're providing? If so, what should we be doing and why?
I don't personally know of an issue about the quality of the education that we're providing. I think, and then maybe this will come from someone else's question, but I think the real issue is enrollment and PR, and I think that the district has been doing a much better job of PR. I mean, significantly better in the last year. The presentation for the strategic planning session had information that I had never heard and was awesome, and that if people in the community could hear that information would be great. I would say that, not reflecting of quality, but the inconsistencies in the types of education that kids are getting in the elementary schools, it would be nice if we could find a way to at least explain to the parents why those things are happening in a way that would help them to understand that it's not that one school is giving them a better education than others. But I don't really see any, I don't really know, and you guys maybe know that there's quality issues, but my personal experience has not been that there's quality issues, and none of the people that I have talked to have issues with the quality of education.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any follow-up?
I don't.
Okay.
Mr. Jackson?
Hi, Jill. So my question is, what priorities should guide the board's actions as fiscal pressures impact our facilities, staffing, and programming? I picked a really hard question, I think.
Yes, thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't know, I would just say that decisions should be made under sort of a guiding set of priorities that are set by the board. I mean, I would imagine that you all have sat down and decided that you were going to focus on things that are long-term goals and things that are short-term goals, and putting students, I guess, somewhere at the top of that would be what I would imagine should be the kind of top of the pyramid, I would say. Depending on what things present themselves as the most current issue. You know, if the issue right now is, for instance, like if the issue was that we couldn't find good teachers, then I would imagine that would be guiding some portion of the decisions that were being made. Or if the issue right now is that the schools are jam-packed, then I would imagine that would also guide decisions that are made. I don't think that either one of those things are issues, so I would imagine the board to some degree has or would sit down and try to decide what our focus is for the year, or the next 3 years, or 5 years, if you're going to tie them to the strategic plan, I would imagine.
Thank you. Do you have follow-up?
No, thank you.
Ms. Hoppy, the next question is yours.
Thanks for being here. My question is about how people see our district. If a family was thinking of moving to Stoughton and they were to ask you whether or not they should enroll their children in our district, how would you respond?
I would say definitely, because our district is always improving. I mean, it has constantly improved since we've moved here. When we first moved here, our realtor told us that the schools were not, and this is like a PR thing, I think that the board should talk to the real estate agents in town, but she was like, well, the schools are not that great, but a levy just passed, and so they're getting better. And I was thinking, oh, well, my kids are in elementary school, so we'll see, maybe that doesn't work out. But I have found that the schools have been improving, with the exception of the enrollment decline, and with that, the funding decline. So I think that that's all tied hand in hand. If we can raise enrollment, then we can increase funding, and then we can improve the schools even more. But I think that we have great schools. Our graduation rate is great. Our high school, the technology in our high school is fantastic. I mean, my son is loving middle school and the elective options that they have at middle school. I mean, I think that's really great. It says a lot. We have good teachers. I mean, some of the best teachers I've met have been in Stoughton School District. So, thank you.
Do you have any follow-up? Ms. Fitzgibbon, the last question is yours.
That's the last.
See the
You were
time
Wonder
go?
Woman in that movie, right?
Secret's out.
I thought that Wonder Woman costume was going to not show who that was.
You were not too disguised.
So, my question is, what are the challenges that you think our district is facing right now, and what do you propose to do to face those challenges?
Well, I think that, like I said earlier, enrollment is the biggest challenge, and I think that it appears that a lot is being done to do good PR and increase enrollment, and I think the new development will help get more residents here, and that will help enrollment go up. I don't think, but I don't know, you all maybe know, but I don't think people are leaving the district that live here. I don't think that they're sending their kids outside the district as a general rule. I don't have that impression from my friends, but I know I live in a silo, so maybe that is happening. So I think we need more houses, and then we need more people to move here, and then I think that will increase enrollment, which will address our funding issues, and with more money, we can do all kinds of things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any follow-up?
No.
So that concludes the questions we have for you. In a second, we'll give you up to 5 minutes to say anything else you want to say, or you can just turn around and run away at this point, whichever you prefer. Before you do that, though, on behalf of all of us, I do want to thank you for coming out tonight. I know this is not the most comfortable procedure, and hopefully you have other things to do with the Monday evening than spend it here talking to us. So we are very grateful that you've chosen to take your time and come to talk to us. So thank you very much for that. Now, if there's anything else you want to tell us, please do.
I don't even know, and I probably should have something else, right? But I didn't really prepare any closing remarks. Next time I will have to do that. No, just, I guess the only other thing I would say is that I am optimistic about the direction of the school district. I'm generally an optimistic person, and I think that the people that are on the board right now, I know that there are a lot of new people on the board, but I see that as a great opportunity to have a group of people that would be willing to work together and collaborate on things because they don't have a preconceived idea of how the board works or what they should be doing and which decisions they should be making for who and why. And so I think that it's exciting to me that this board could be really collaborative and really could accomplish a lot if everybody was on the same page.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. Is this a group of people who've left their government assignment to the last possible minute?
You're all on camera.
Yeah, at least they're honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course they're honest about it. They can't hide. They're all sitting right there. So y'all have to get something signed, right? Yeah. So after we interview this last candidate, we're going to vote to see who we seat, and there's going to be a few minutes of milling around while we do that. So that's, I'll tell you when, but that'll be a good time to come up and get something signed.
And Burke can't sign anything, right? Am I right?
I don't think so.
It's spelled O-N-S-A-G.
You know who I was next to on the race was Isabel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. So you were Wonder Woman for the race? You were Wonder Woman for the race?
Yeah, Katie and
Oh, for the canoe race.
for the canoe. Yeah.
No pie.
Alright.
I'm disappointed, no pie.
And neither one
What
of
did
you
you do
answered my
Saturday?
question.
You didn't get pie?
No, I like this. We have a tradition. We go watch the canoe race and have pie. It's like,
I go have corn.
yeah.
Walking
Same as
tacos.
pie.
All right, let's focus.
Our last candidate is Aaron Lednick.
No.
Hi, Mary.
Hey,
Hi, thank you for coming.
you bet, thank you.
So you're the last of 3 candidates. Hopefully the chair is warmed up, but not too.
Too warm? I hope not, yeah.
No flames.
Oh, that's
So what
funny.
we're doing is each candidate gets a 5-minute opening statement. We have 20 minutes. Each board member will ask you a question. There may be follow-up, there may not. We're asking the same question to each candidate. Then at the end, if you have the stamina for it, we give you an additional 5 minutes for a closing statement. Okay?
Sounds good.
And I will tell you when you get to about a minute left on your time.
All right,
Okay?
okay.
Go.
All right, thanks. All right, well, why for me school board? I think I really want to give back something to the Stoughton community. Living here now, have been here for about 8 years. I really want to help out the community, help out our schools, help out our staff, as well as their administration, get through some tough times that are coming, that have been here already. I see myself as somebody who could bridge, let's say, how do you want to say it, some communication probably issues we've had in the last, 10, 15 years. I try to, get a good relationship between administration, school board, and I think staff. I also really want to work with the community members to grow our community. I mean, we need more population, but I think I think it'd be a great thing if we can get more people to move, more families to stay. All right, I think we have a very excellent school district, I guess, and some great programs that I know a lot of other areas do not have, and we should be keeping holding on to our students here and not having them leave, bringing kids in, innovating in different ways that we, that maybe other school districts are doing that are getting our students from us. I think we also need to change the tide of a perception of the Stoughton schools. Okay, I think that even in my new position in Madison, I see that a lot of you were in Stoughton. I'm like, that was a tough place, and I was like, it really wasn't. It was a really good place to be. It was a really nice community, good strong schools, and we just need to change that feeling or that general sense of maybe how we're viewed, I guess, in Dane County. So yeah, that's my big opening statement, I guess, for us today. So we're good to go.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
The first question is Mr. Fries.
Thank you for coming.
You bet.
We'll start basic. What do you believe the purpose of public education is, and why is it important to our community?
All right. Big question there. It's been debated a lot, I'm sure. But Joe, I think the biggest thing for me is we need to provide a quality education for all of our students, no matter where they're at, no matter where they're coming from, no matter what background they have. And we need to find ways to reach students where they are. That is, I feel like, a right for all students for a free and good public education. And that's, yeah. And what was the second part again, Joe? My apologies.
That's all right. Why is it important to our community?
Oh, yeah. I think, in our community, we really need to, as I said before, we need to grow. We need to get, more families to come into our town, okay, and come in and utilize our great schools. And then I think, and also work fiscally responsible, don't get me wrong, that we need to figure out ways that we can grow our revenue in some ways in our community. So it's yeah, but I still go back to the idea that we have to teach all of our kids, okay, no matter who we're getting in, no matter where our students are coming from, we have to find ways to reach them and make them have some success and a positive experience in our schools.
Follow?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second question is mine.
All right.
What do you perceive the roles of the district administrator, the Board of Education, and the individual members of the board to be?
All right. Mr. Administrator. All right. I would say, so district administrator is somebody who's has a good vision for where our community needs to be. And I see that person as also as a bridge between staff, okay, the staff and the school board. So communicating how those relationships are going and how the schools are going. I think, school board members aren't there in schools every day. Don't probably hear everything that goes on in all the schools every day. I don't know if Dr. Onsager you do or not, but it's something I think that we need to. That's a good. I mean, that would be a really strong role for that district administrator. Is somebody who's a communicator to the school board who makes the big decisions about, obviously budgetary issues, and it's an advisory elected position. This is a position that, as a school board member, yes, you can have personal influences, don't get me wrong, but you are a responsibility to the taxpayers of the Stoughton area community. I would want to be as responsible as I could possibly be there, and to hope, I think also our school board members themselves need to be active members of our educational community as well, as much as, getting either involved in other activities, okay, or, getting, say being visible, don't get me wrong, but,
I'm sorry, being what?
Not being visible, okay, but being, somebody that, whether we're working with the city council or we're working with the Dane County communities, whether we're, offering up tutoring or whatever we can do to possibly help our students. That's where I see our role as a school board.
And can you talk a little bit about the role of the individual members?
Yeah. I think the members themselves, I think, as I said, they might have an agenda, okay, of some sort, but I think that their role is to be informed, to obviously reading documents from our, that come to us from our administrators, and to also be ears to community members, hear what the community members feel, and bring that information back, disseminate that information, obviously, and bring that back to the school board and have good discussions about where our school district needs to be.
Thank you. The next question is Mr. Coughlin.
Hi, thanks for coming. What are some qualities of an effective board member, and how do you feel you have exemplified these in your previous experiences?
Ooh, that's a good one. Qualities of a good board member. I think somebody who is responsible enough to read all the board minutes, okay? I'm not saying I'm accusing anybody here of not doing that, okay, first and foremost. I know I'm sure they're going to be long if I get so lucky. But, somebody who comes to the table that has, either is communicating with Dr. Onsager about what's going on in the schools, or what does this really mean, or trying to get clarification either from him or from other administrators to find out if there are points in things that you want to know more about. So being informed, being educated about that. As far as school law, okay, learning more myself about it. I know there's a lot of intricate parts to that I'm not as well versed in it as maybe some of you are probably. And I think to also be, as I said before, as fiscally responsible as we can be with our, I hate using that term, but as we can be with our taxpayers. And then as far as what qualities for me, I think I'm somebody, who's a good listener, a good communicator, somebody who will always want to fight for the right thing in education, okay, or what I feel is the right thing, but also want to have a discussion and talk and be open to other ideas and not just be my own decision every single time. So I think it's a I don't know, for me it's an opportunity for me to give back to our community and do something that I was doing, but now I'm going to be doing it maybe, in a different capacity.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any follow-up?
I do not.
Ms. Sork, next question is yours.
Do you believe that the Stoughton Area School District could be doing more to significantly improve the quality of our education? If so, what should we be doing and why?
Ooh, that's a big one. What can we be doing? I think I said before, working with our community to help our stuff grow. I know in fiscally, it's a tough situation we're in. Statewide, our population's declining, okay? I mean, in some areas that are this state, not as much, but, and definitely we are, okay? As much as the building is happening around my house, I don't think we're seeing the benefits maybe of that necessarily already. Working with partnerships, businesses, to grow our community in a better, in a different way, let's put it that way, okay? The fiscal thing is tough because we're only given what we're given, and that formula has not been delved to us in a great and easy way or a nice way, I guess. Nothing against anything here, and I think growing our staff. I mean, for somebody whom, I didn't leave our school on a bad note. It wasn't something I was bitter or angry about the school district is. It was a different opportunity that I had that I wanted to go after, but seeing other staff that have left for reasons, for some other reasons that I think could have been controlled, or maybe it's tough to see some really good people not in our district anymore. I really want to work so that we can shore that up. And I don't want to see, 25 openings every year in our school district. I'd rather have that in Madison, not here. So let's put it that way.
Do you have any follow-up?
Obviously, staff is important for education quality, for sure. Are there other things that you think would impact that?
Yeah, I think as I'm learning more in the role that I'm in, but I think, are we using our technology, just what I'm doing now, but are we using our technology in meaningful ways? How are we using it? What are we using to analyze how the investment we've made in our schools have happened? How has it changed our teaching? Are kids doing better because of this increased technology, or they're bringing home this technology? I think that's one facet, as well as what's the behavior aspect of that, okay? How are we dealing with more behavioral issues, or are we, I look at, are kids doing what they should be doing with the devices they have? I mean, it's a big question, and I don't know how, if we're doing a survey or how the survey is being done in here in Stoughton, but it'd be intriguing for me to know, as well as I think for everybody to know, of how everything's being used. So, how much has it really transformed how their teaching is going? What's the creativity? What's the collaboration, and so forth among students? So,
thank you.
Mr. Jackson, the next question is yours.
Hey.
So you've touched on fiscal matters. I got a question related to fiscal matters.
Awesome.
I picked the worst one. What priorities should guide the board's actions as fiscal pressures impact our facilities, staffing, and programming?
I mean, that's a tough one, because given the those are some hard decisions that are going to need to be made if enrollment keeps going where it is going, or at least projected. And so, finding ways to support our staff so that they can do the quality job. And as far as can't print more money, obviously, but as I mentioned before, working to grow our community, okay, and to use those resources that we currently have. And again, I don't know all the intricacies of everything that goes on, but use those resources in ways that can benefit not only our staff, but all of our students as well. I think that they're the reasons why we're all here, our students. That's the reason why our teachers, our staff, everybody's there every day, is because they have a definite care for their students. And so, but finding ways that we can yeah, I don't have the ideas right off the top of my brain here, Steve, but I'm sure, knowing some more information, I could make some better decisions with that.
Thanks,
You
sir.
bet.
Any follow-ups, Steve?
No, no follow-up, thank you.
Ms. Hoppy, the next question is yours.
Hi, thanks for coming.
You bet.
My question is about how people describe our district. If a family is thinking of moving to Stoughton and they were to ask you whether or not they should enroll their children in our district, how would you respond?
It's a great question. It seems like number 4A on the staff survey a couple of years ago. Sorry. Okay, I can't remember that one. It would seem to always be low. But I will say, for me, it's a wonderful community, all right? You have the ability to have a big town aspect of a life right near Madison, but you have a small town feel of our community. I've taught in a bunch of different schools, big and small, and I see that our size at just about just under 1,000 kids, and let's say at a high school or some of our other schools, they're great sizes. Okay, it's a great. Kids have opportunities to do wonderful things in our schools. Our music programs are phenomenal. All right. I've seen some great things in our athletic programs. Our facilities are pretty good as well. There's a lot of opportunities for our students to do things in a community that a lot of people do not have in other places. I look at our academic programs, and the things that we're offering our students are, I'd say unmatched, but I look at, they're pretty good things, okay? There's a pretty solid education our students can get when they leave our school district. Yeah, but to me, it's the community aspect of it, what we have here in Stoughton that's really strong. And some really great staff, some really great administrators, really working hard to make sure everybody's having a good experience.
Thank you. No follow-up.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Hi. So, what are the challenges that you think our district is facing, and what do you propose to do to face those challenges?
Yeah. I think go back to the fiscal thing here, but I think to me it's our biggest challenge is finding ways to grow our community, to increase our state funding, or whether or not it's changing state politics to get more funding. I don't know if that's a possibility even at this point, but I'd love it to be a possibility. That would be a great thing if we can somehow get more revenue. I think the other issue has been, I mentioned, Kathleen, is the perception. Okay, we got to change how we're perceived in the county or in the area. We should be a school of choice or a school district of choice for people, and and I know we've worked on trying to brand ourselves and get different things, and I know it's been a hard process. It's not easy to do something like that and to change how how things were going. But I think if we can find other ways to do that, whether more marketing or whether just being more upfront about what we have going on in our community, I think we can turn the tide a little bit and help ourselves out.
Any follow-up?
Thank you.
So those are all the questions we have for you. I want to thank you for coming in.
You bet.
I know this is perhaps not the most enjoyable procedure ever, and
Been through worse, Frank.
no,
I got yelled at
Well-
today by several people. That's okay. We're good.
we'll work on it for next time.
All right.
But in all seriousness, we are grateful that you took the time to come in
You
and
bet.
talk to us this evening.
Okay.
You now have 5 minutes left to tell us anything else you want to tell us. But you don't have to use it all if you
No,
don't
I
want
won't.
to.
I will not, because I know your time is precious, because there's a meeting after this too. But I just really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to the board. If this isn't the right time for me, this isn't the right time for me, and I totally understand, and no hard feelings. I'll always support everything that our board does. And I just look forward to helping out the community if I can, and being part of something that's really good. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Board members, at this time we vote. Yoli, you have the ballot.
Yeah, at this time, I'll be passing this around. You're gonna have one of this, and then you're gonna select the candidate one, sign it and date it, and give it to me, and then I'll probably.
Okay. What's the date? The date is May 21st. 2018.
2018.
7:17 PM.
Okay.
Legible signatures, because mine's not.
Yours is all artistic and stuff.
Sure. Should have been a dot. Oh, fine, surgeon. Just put your I'm on the border, it's fine. You can tease me now. I do too at work, yeah. Exactly, but it becomes this abstract thing, right?
Yes.
What is that? Then you get one that you really like, you're like, how come they don't all look like that?
Then it's kind of just a line.
Exactly. Yeah. We can mostly do the signatures now, but, one point there was a practice where you have a stamp made. I got a bad secretary, there was no more stamp.
We're ahead of schedule.
Seems unlike us. That was a good description of one big agenda. We got things we need to do. We do. I'm not opposed to doing it. I'm just pointing out that that's how much.
One
big agenda. Tim and I were
That would have been
one big agenda. Yeah.
There's something probably.
So we do have a tie.
Okay.
And do I say the names of the person we have the tie? Well, would
I think you do.
Yeah.
okay. There's a tie between candidate number 1, Jeff Leverage, and number 2, Jill Patterson.
Okay.
So we have to do the same thing we did again.
Yep, we do a revote.
And so I will just give you the yellow one.
How many sets did you bring? How many sets do you have?
3, so
Okay.
we can only have 3.
So get it together. It's rock, paper, scissors. I think it goes 5. I got 2. Is this how we're breaking the tie?
Yes.
Do we just put an X in the candidate?
You can just.
Oh, I got something
Oh, I'm
different.
sorry. Oh, that's what you have.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah, I got like. the
It's round
tally
2.
sheet. She handed me the tally sheet. Like,
I gave you mine.
you know. It's still the 21st, Jimmy. Made it easy.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so we broke the tie. And the candidate that was selected with 4 votes was Jill Patterson.
So how do we do this?
I go up and break the news and
Okay.
bring Jill back down to be sworn in.
Fantastic. Everybody else, let's take a 5-minute break at this point. Students, if you all need your agenda signed, this is a perfect time to do that. I understand.
Yeah. So I just need. Okay. So we read both of them, both together. Okay. And then we should sign. No, she does. Yeah, signs are here. And then, and I think you do this one.
Nope, because
Oh.
I did the notary,
Oh,
which is
okay.
why I redid it, because I was like,
Oh, got it. Okay.
and she just says, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Okay.
I love what you do. I'm just gonna throw these in.
Oh, okay.
Whip out your Sharpie. Sure it does.
So we gotta swear you and then.
There's a seat there or there's a seat there?
She said next to John.
Thank you. So yeah, like they live in literally they was gone and I actually my so my husband there was
No, we both do
Oh. They were trying to say her here. Doesn't somebody sit here and I just.
How quickly we forget.
It's really hard to see around on side.
Yeah, that's what Becky says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you to move over here, because I couldn't see it outside. Let's,
We have, we're missing Joe.
yeah, let's wait for Joe to get back, and we'll take more in a second.
Tim?
And Tim?
And Tim. Everybody's now back. Jolie, would you swear a new member, please?
Sure. I, Jill Patterson, having been elected or appointed to the office of school board member, Stoughton Area School District, swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And you and I will meet sometime in the next week or so, and we'll start to figure out things like committee assignments. We will also set up a meeting with Dr. Onsager, and we can, between us, we can give you the lay of the land. So, assuming you survive. I'm sorry? Yeah. How hard could it be, right? Believe me, if I can do it, it's not that hard. So we have a full agenda tonight. So I will call the regular board meeting to order. Do I get to use the gavel?
Anytime you want, you can use the gavel.
Oh, don't. All right. So we're in order, more or less. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bouvon is excused. Mr. Coughlin?
Here?
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here?
Ms. Sword?
Here.
Ms. Huppy?
Here.
Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Patterson?
Here.
President Sullivan?
Here. At this time, we will open the microphone to public comment. Anybody who wants to may approach the microphone and say what's ever on their mind. We ask that you keep comments under 3 minutes, more or less. I will now wait and stare meaningfully at the audience. Seeing no one approaching the microphone, we will move on. Mr. Bouvon is not here, so we do not have a legislative update. Dr. Onsager?
Thanks, I just have a few things. One of the first things is I anticipate next board meeting bringing to you a proposal for potentially adding a kindergarten teacher at Fox. Looking at our numbers right now, our kindergarten numbers at Fox are creeping up to the point where we're at about 23 in each class. We try to keep our target to around 22 if we can. If anybody has tried to corral fifth graders, and when you have 23 in a room, that is like herding cats sometimes. And so I anticipate bringing a proposal to add a kindergarten teacher at Fox. Next board meeting, I asked if possible, and this is something I'll touch base with President Sullivan to see if it's feasible, of maybe doing it in one board meeting, because if the sooner we can get this approved, the sooner we can hire it and get things set for next year. But if we do a two-step, I'm okay with that, but my preference would be one step. So I anticipate bringing that to the board next board meeting for more of a formal presentation. So just a heads up on that one. We're also in the process of developing an online class at the high school. And this may seem like a funny one to do as we continue to work on this, but we're looking at online Fayette. Fayette.
Oh.
With technology nowadays, with Fitbits and watches and everything else, you have, we feel that we can design a personalized Phi-Ed class for students to allow them to take potentially more credits at the high school and do a more personalized Phi-Ed type of unit. So we're in the process of working on that. More of that to come as we kind of continue down this path. Next thing I have is just a reminder that, and I don't have to tell the students this, we have early release on Friday. Elementary will be dismissed at 11, River Bluff at 11:25, the high school at 11:35, and it is Memorial Day weekend, so there is no school on Monday, so it is a nice long weekend. And then just to make sure it's on your calendar, Sunday, June 3rd is graduation, and that is a great event and a time where we honor the class of 2018 and send them on their way. So
That's something the board members traditionally attend.
correct.
Do you want to say anything about the coherent governance seminar?
Sure. President Sullivan and I went to a session on coherent governance. It was last Thursday, was it?
Yeah, I think.
All the days are blending together lately. And coherent governance is another or a different model from operating than we currently do. We are what they call a traditional model of governance. So we're looking at, and this stemmed from some conversations at the board retreat as well, of how do we look and are there ways that we can operate and function more effectively as a cohesive unit. And so coherent governance is a method where our governance model that more and more Wisconsin schools are going to, where it is definite delineation and definition of this is the board's role, this is administration role, board focuses on overall policies, and because they are setting broad policies, they have less policies than we currently have. Boards that are on coherent governance usually have about 30-some policies, and every policy gets a monitoring report, so every policy is monitored once a year. So there's no overall report. So as we continue to look further into different models, that was last Thursday that we spent 4 hours with a group, just learning. We were the only district there that wasn't already in this model. The rest of the districts were training new board members in the model. So we had an opportunity just to sit and learn and ask some questions of what this model was.
And that's something that as we sort of move through the summer and start thinking about how we want to organize ourselves and how we want to divide the responsibilities between us and the superintendent, that's something that we'll come back to. But I wanted to give you all a little bit of a preview of one possibility. John?
Is this something that would be good for us to have a board development retreat of some sort, or meeting of some sort, or session to get spun up on?
I think eventually. I think right now we're still in the fact-finding stage of all the different, what is out there? What are our different options? And to be able to have a comprehensive conversation about different options we have, including what we're currently doing. And I think that would be a more valuable conversation than just one here or there. There's a couple more that I want to dig into a little bit, just to hear and find some more information on.
Okay. So we did did you order the books, or do you have to wait for the new editions to come out?
They're ordered, but they won't be shipped till the new editions come out.
Okay. So there are materials, and we'll make those available for you all.
And I guess follow-up question on this process, is this something that is mostly focused on policy?
The way I understood it is that there's a pretty strict delineation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, between policy and operation.
Right.
So the board sets a policy, and the policy might be something like, we want our students to be safe. And it would, the policy would say some things about what safety looks like. The district administrator would have indicators that we would evaluate people on. So one example would be the number of workers' comp claims by employees. And so, periodically, once throughout the year, more if we're concerned, we get a presentation on the safety policy. How are we doing? How many concussions have we had in sports? How many workers' comp claims have we had? Whatever measures we have chosen to evaluate safety, we get a report on, and we evaluate how we're doing.
Do you guys feel like this is a significant departure from the generalized policies that we implement right now with more specific guidelines? Because it feels like that's the direction that the policy, or that sounds similar to the direction the policy committee has been trying to go for a couple of years, but are there other fundamentals that are different?
I think the biggest difference is, yeah, that is what the policy committee has been trying to get to. But this groups the policies together. So you don't have as many policies, because right now to have a monitoring report on every policy that we have in the book, we would have to meet every day for that. And so this groups them. It also, then the board is setting, again, the broad policy with kind of parameters and discussion on those. So if the example they used was safety and they used arming staff, that is something that if the board feels strongly against arming staff, it would be in the policy. The superintendent will ensure that students and staff are safe, however, cannot arm staff. And that was an easy one for people to understand. And there would be discussions on.
So it's as general as you can be with
Correct.
specific
Correct.
Markers that
Right.
can't or must be
With
obeyed.
with specific outcome markers.
Right.
Okay.
And then the operational details, I think it would be a significant difference for us in that many of the operational details are left to the superintendent. So right now, a lot of the things that we're discussing, that we're voting on, are operational. And under this model, and I'm not advocating for the model, it's just
Right.
interesting to see a different way of thinking about it. Under this model, we delegate the operational details to the superintendent. We evaluate him on the results of whatever operational decisions he makes. And if there's something that he wants to do operationally that is, outside the lines of what we think is appropriate, we put it in policy. And the example would be, the example that they used was guns in schools, but there certainly could be other ones.
Okay.
Steve?
Any school districts nearby that are doing this?
DeForest, Sun Prairie,
Columbus. I had about an hour and a half conversation in the parking lot with the Columbus School
Okay.
Board president. That was
right.
a little overwhelming.
So those are the three in the area that I know of that are trying to.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Patterson?
Did they have more administrative costs then? Because it seems like the administration would be doing more work.
I don't believe there's more administrative costs. There's just more of a clear definition of what the different roles are.
Okay.
A lot of what we do now, the administration does the work anyway.
Okay.
It comes here, in one sense, we may add work because we're asking them to do additional things to persuade us to adopt a specific operational. There was going to be a noun at the end, I forget what it was. Whereas under this model, the operational stuff, the decisions are made at the level of the superintendent or whoever the superintendent delegates it to.
Okay.
Other question?
I have a question about the kindergarten staff addition. Is this an exceptionally large kindergarten class? Do we feel that this staffing adjustment is something that's going to have to propagate up?
Well, that's what we'll have to, and that's why I'm always hesitant, and I kind of look at them really closely because our numbers fluctuate throughout the year, and they fluctuate throughout the summer. We're just at a point now at 23 students per class. This is what's in our system being enrolled. This could be our overall kindergarten numbers are relatively flat. So our overall kindergarten numbers are at about 200. And we've been about 200 for the last 4 or 5 years, I think it is. It just happens to be where they're living and what attendance area. Whereas, you know, one of the things that we started to talk last year is elementary redesign. If we had all the kindergarten classes in one building, I don't think I would be making this recommendation, because you could disperse out our kindergarten classes. But where they geographically fall right now, this could be a blip class. We also, though, our targets also increase the older the students get. And so we could fluctuate with this class. In first grade, we could lose a few students, we could gain some, we could. So it's really year by year we look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Are the class sizes set in policy?
Its targets are set in guidelines, I believe, in class policy guidelines or the administrative guidelines. And we try to stick at 22 or lower in our K2 classrooms. I believe it's 23 in 3-4 and 24, I know it's 22 in the lower ones. But we have the targets that we try to stick with. We try to get as close if we can to them. Sometimes it's a matter of we're over, and if we add a class, we're going to be below 20, but I think at the younger grades, I'd rather be smaller than larger.
Tim, are any of those numbers people moving within the district? I mean, are these kids that could otherwise be going somewhere?
No,
different elementary?
we held really tight to the kindergarten students in particular who requested to go to another school, because we had kind of this bubble. And we held really tight to that, because then if they leave one school, that may really skew the numbers one way or the other. So there were a few exceptions, like siblings already were going there, or they've moved during the year type of things. But for the most part, we held really tight to this year, what geographic school you're in is where you went to. Because of our numbers, and because if we keep losing students going to from one school to another, we cannot, I was worried about academically being able to offer the same program in all the different schools.
And that's why I asked, because there's been that little trend.
Yep.
I think it's good what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Next item is the consent agenda.
Okay. I move approval of the May 7th, 2018 regular board meeting minutes. I move approval of the May 3rd, June 5th, 2018 check register and May 15, 2018 P-card transaction report as presented. We would like to say thank you to the following individuals and group and move approval of their donations to the district. From Stoughton Sport Boosters, $7,500 to be used for high school athletic uniforms. From Wisconsin Retired Educators Association for $2,000 to be used for Sand Hill Discovery Station Kindergarten STEM program. From Stoughton High School Band Boosters, $2,000 for high school band instrument and equipment. From Stoughton Youth Girls Basketball, $1,500 for scholarship in high school girls basketball program. From Stoughton Culver, $600 for water fountain, water bottle refill stations at Fox Prairie. From Sons of Norway, Wergeland Lodge number 28, $600 for the Norwegian dancer trip. From Kigansa Masonic Lodge number 73, $500 to be used for Kigansa Masonic Lodge scholarship. From the family of Alice Peterson in care of Miss Deborah Mirren, $500 for library book for Prairie. From the Sidney Mai 17th of May Incorporated, $500 to be used for Norwegian dancer trip. From Stoughton Dance Boosters, $450 for dance team hotel cost at state tournament. From Christ Lutheran Church, $250 for the Norwegian dancer trip. From Elizabeth and Derry Moore, $100 for North Star trip to San Francisco. From BSW Badger Post 328 Incorporated, $73 for Kigansa fourth grade field trip cost for students who cannot afford to pay. From Greg and Roberta Lemon, a violin and viola valued at $350. From Jan Zundby, prize promos. Teachers purchased by River Bluff for the Goodbye 5K Fun Run, valued at $250. From Vicky Tom, valued as school supplies and gym ball, valued at $75. And related cash donation budget adjustment for $16,433. I move approval of permanent professional educator contract for Trina Boyd, Kristen Calvin, Bo Riley Gett, Maggie Heck, Abby Quinn, Brian Lyons, Jamie Martin, Michael Maves, Tori Price, Shannon Salter, and Sarah Langer for the 2018-19 school year, and a permanent administrative contract for Catherine Algren effective for the 2018-2020 school year. I move to approve the resignation of Brad Ashmore, Amanda Killen, and Amy Moe at the end of the 2017-18 school year. And I move to approve the 2018-19 CISA 2 annual contract for $13,440.
The consent agenda has been moved. I didn't catch that all, Yoli. Would you read it again? Consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sword. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will call on the question. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Can I abstain because I didn't read those minutes?
And one abstention.
Thank you.
The consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda are the committee reports. Ms. Sword?
Finance Committee, for last month, I think one of the big things we talked about, and hopefully I get this square, Erica, was we talked about budget transfers, and we don't really have very many of those, but we were putting them in the consent agenda, and we found out they need to be a discussion action item. So those will periodically pop up, but it's not going to be something we'll see all the time.
Okay.
And then we decided tonight to go to an every 2 month schedule for our meetings instead of monthly. So we're going to try that for a while, and we'll reevaluate if we need to go back to monthly, we will. So our next meeting will be July 16th.
Will the financial reports still be available?
Financial reports will still be available, and they will be posted on the website, and then we will hear when they get posted so that we're able to take a look at them, if they're still available for the public.
Okay.
And the other thing we did install, one of the interesting discussion items that we had tonight was that we have installed cameras on the stop signs on the buses. So the stop sign goes out. We've had a lot of problems with people not stopping for the buses when they have the stop sign out and the flashers going, and this will capture that information we would need, and it gets reported to the sheriff, correct? Yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
Any questions? John?
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
No, I didn't have any questions for Allison. I didn't know if we were doing other committees.
Let's go and invite Steve to talk about facilities.
We had a facilities committee meeting on the 15th. I would just point out that Cal Merith presented pretty much everything, which was fantastic. He does a very good job. He went over projects that are currently underway and projects that are planned for the summer. He reviewed the materials that we all saw regarding the facility study. He presented that to the committee. He also presented the energy team report, which is really a two-pager of information related to our facilities and energy. The interesting thing is we do really well from a Energy Star rating for our facilities. And he pointed out that, you know, there's still some work to do to improve, and that hopefully from, we heard about the retro commissioning from the facility study, that will improve our Energy Star ratings at our facilities. And we also talked about the modernization of our classrooms and the possibility of setting up a meeting in September for us to learn a little bit more, not just the facilities committee, but the board, to learn a little bit more about what it means, modernization of the classroom. So 2 action items came out of that meeting. One, to set up this modernization of the classroom in September possibly, and to get the current list of projects that the district is pursuing. And Becky was able to get that, so we checked that action item off promptly. So thanks, Becky. I think that was it.
Thank you.
Just so no one thinks that the ERC has not been meeting, we have. The reason I don't have a big report is because both of the items we've been talking about are immediately following this on the agenda. That will be the compensation committee and the handbook, so I don't need to inform you of all the details. You've read them, I hope you have. But I wanted you to know we've been meeting.
Nice work.
All right.
John, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to mention the ad hoc committee that we have with the city. I know that the city has appointed their membership to that committee. They appointed 3 members. We had left 2 of our slots potentially vacant. I would request that we fill those sometime before I set the next meeting date, but I'm going to be reaching out to the membership on the city to set up a meeting date, and the focus of that next meeting, and I assume moving forward, will be the study on attracting and retaining young families that UW-Madison did, that Tim presented, and there's a whole wealth of additional information about on the internet, but also the researchers who did that study are all at UW-Madison. So, and we have some access via Stoughton residents who can also help us get in touch with them. So I think that that is going to be some of the initial data that we use to try and figure out what Stoughton can better do to make sure that we attract and retain more young families.
Thank you. If anyone is interested in being appointed to that committee, please email me. I would like to make the appointments within the next week or so. Thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to ask John, who are the 3 that were appointed?
From the city?
Yeah.
Nicole Weisinger was appointed. I believe Sid
Borsma.
Yeah, and I don't remember who the 3rd person is.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mayor Swadley told me, and it went right out of my head. But I can find out. Anything else in terms of committee reports, anyone? Moving to the next agenda item then, the compensation committee recommendation. Welcome.
Hi there, I'm Lynn Wood. I'm with Wood Communications Group, and I have had the opportunity to work with the Educator Compensation Committee over the past several months. And we are pleased to come before you today on their behalf, and several of the committee members are here. and we would like to present a new proposed compensation plan for your consideration. I think the best way to describe it is that we have created a video to keep messages consistent. We have shared it with the ERC. We'd like to share it with you today, and our intent would be to share it with educators then as starting tomorrow. So I think that's probably the best place to start.
There's no sound, so first.
It doesn't work? Maybe it'll work.
Hello, this is Erica Pickett, Director of Business Services for the Stoughton Area School District. Over the past couple of weeks, a number of focus groups were held regarding
Not necessarily. It should like distributing it.
Thank you for taking a few minutes for an update from the Educator Compensation Committee. In this video, we will be providing details about a new proposed educator compensation plan for the Stoughton Area School District. We will outline the details of the plan and will address the timing and implementation from the current plan to the new one. We hope this video answers most of the basic questions you may have about the new plan. We have also created a comprehensive FAQ document that can be found in the communications portal if you'd like additional details. If you have any specific questions about your individual situation or transition into the new plan, please contact your building administrator.
First, as always, we need to recognize all of the educators and administrators who have dedicated so much time over the past several years to explore how to create the best possible compensation plan for the district. Together, committee members have researched and considered numerous variations of plans and have discussed and thoughtfully processed the impacts, benefits, and challenges of many options. Throughout this lengthy process, regardless of which version of committee was sitting around the table, committee members have worked extremely hard to examine various compensation models and to design one that might work for educators and the district. They have engaged in thoughtful and candid conversations about the district's priorities and values. They have listened and heard their colleagues' cares, concerns, and frustrations, and have kept that input top of mind during their committee work. And they have worked hard to be transparent in their efforts. The culmination of the work over the past 18 months is a simple, easy to understand, and easy to implement plan they hope will provide a solid foundation on which the district can move forward in a positive direction.
Many lessons have been learned throughout the compensation planning process, but one significant lesson needs to be underscored as we unveil the new proposed compensation plan. There are many things that are deeply valued by this district, but not all of those can either be acknowledged or compensated for within the confines of the salary structure. The committee, as well as many educators, administrators, and board members, have expressed a desire to incorporate a wide range of components in the compensation plan to demonstrate how we as a district value things such as professionalism, collaboration, professional development, contributions to the district, and excellence in teaching. A considerable amount of time has been spent exploring ways to incorporate these elements and qualities into the compensation plan, and the committee has concluded that it is neither possible nor desirable to use salary to achieve these outcomes.
With that in mind, the committee is recommending a compensation framework that rewards educators for their commitment to educating students and their commitment to the district using two components, annual increases and retention incentives. Let's look at each of those two elements. First, the annual increase will be given to educators based on successful completion of their professional responsibilities in their role, building, and district. Educators on a performance improvement plan, including receiving a 1 in any component of their evaluation at any time during the school year, are not eligible for increases and will be frozen at their current salary for the duration of the improvement plan. The educator becomes eligible again for increases the year following their release from the improvement plan. It will be assumed that educators are meeting expectations and are eligible for the annual increases. It will be the responsibility of each educator's supervising administrator to annually verify the attainment of eligibility criteria or to notify the Director of Human Resources regarding the issuance of an improvement plan. The yearly increase will be calculated based on equal distribution of available funds. This increase is determined by the passage of the annual budget, completion of the SEA negotiations, and after the allocation of retention incentives.
In an effort to retain quality staff, educators will also receive retention incentives that are added to their contract pay after the completion of their 3rd, 5th, 10th, 15th, and 20th, and each sequential 5 years in the district. Retention increases will be reflected in contract pay for the following year. In other words, at the beginning of the 4th, 6th, 11th year, etc. All educators will transition into the plan based on their current salary and their current number of consecutive years in the district. HR will be reaching out to confirm everyone's consecutive years. Data indicates that greater number of educators leave the district after the completion of his or her 3rd and 10th consecutive years. Recognizing these professional transition periods, the retention incentives after the conclusion of the 3rd and 10th year will be higher. Specifically, the increase after completion of the 3rd and 10th year consecutive years will be $2,000, and after completion of the 5th, 15th, 20th, etc., increase to the contract pay will be $1,000. So the educator's total compensation will include his or her current contract pay plus the amount of the annual increase plus any retention increases for which the educator is eligible for that year.
Let's look now at the transition from the current plan into the new plan. The Board of Education stipulated that the career ladder go through one full cycle, so all educators have the opportunity to level over within that plan based on the evaluation cycle. The last round of career ladder leveling meetings occurring this spring will move educators on the career ladder for 2018-19. Salary increases will be based on the career ladder for 18-19. Other components of the career ladder, including action research requirements, will no longer be in effect. Annual increases and retention incentives earned within the parameters of the new compensation plan will be implemented for the 2019-20 contracts after the completion of the bargaining process. The yearly increase will be calculated based on an equal distribution of available funds. This increase is determined by budget, completion of negotiations, and after the allocation of retention incentives earned that year. The proposed compensation framework is designed to be flexible to the realities of a school budget that could vary from year to year based on state budget allocations and other factors. The intention of the framework is to allocate an equal annual increase to all educators. Again, it is anticipated that that amount may vary from year to year.
That is certainly a lot of information to absorb. You may have some additional questions about the plan itself or your personal transition to the new plan. As mentioned earlier, more resources are available on the communications portal, and you should feel free to talk to your building principal if you have questions. But here are some answers to a few of the additional questions you may be asking. What if I just missed the retention incentive because of when I transitioned into this plan? Do I get that incentive anyway?
All educators will enter into the new compensation plan with the salary they currently receive and with the number of consecutive years they have served the district. The retention incentives will be rewarded after the completion of the 3rd, 5th, 10th, 15th, and every subsequent 5 years after that. No retroactive payments will be made as part of the transition into the new compensation plan.
Why are the annual increases in dollar amounts rather than percentages?
In an effort to make the compensation plan as equitable as possible, the annual increases will be an equal dollar amount for all educators.
How does the new education compensation plan reward excellence in teaching?
There are many things we value as a district that don't directly link to compensation. We have come to the conclusion that the compensation plan is not the place to reward excellence. Given the significant interest from educators and school board members in rewarding excellence, the committee recommends the district continue to examine this topic and consider convening a future committee to further explore opportunities in this area.
What compensation do you get for obtaining a master's degree?
Anyone who obtained a master's degree prior to implementation of the career ladder is already compensated for that degree in their current salary. With the implementation of the career ladder, master's degree attainment no longer garnered additional compensation. And with the current changes to state regulations, master's degrees are no longer an element of state licensing. Therefore, the committee determined that in order to allocate as much of the available funds as possible to the annual increases and the retention incentives for which all educators are eligible, master's degree attainment would not be included in the plan.
The committee has put forth its best effort to design a plan that meets the core criteria of a successful compensation plan. We believe this plan aligns with the district vision because it focuses on compensating educators who commit to advancing student learning in the Stoughton Area School District. We hope it will help to retain current staff by rewarding them with salary increases for continued commitment to the district. And we believe that the straightforward, easy to explain, and easy to understand plan will appeal to new educators coming to the district. The committee is hopeful that with this simplified, more straightforward compensation plan, educators will be able to focus their attention more fully on perfecting their craft and exploring innovative ways to educate students and prepare them for future successes.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your willingness to participate in this process and for continuing to commit yourself to the betterment of all the students, staff, and families in the Stoughton Area School District.
Happy to answer any questions that you might have about the proposal.
I have one. One of the issues that came up was the conclusion of the committee that the compensation plan is not the place to reward excellence. Where is the place to reward excellence?
That is a great question. I think the committee talked a lot about opportunities within the schools themselves, within the buildings, creating collaboration and encouraging professional development in a lot of different ways. And I could let the staff speak to it more specifically, but it seemed to introduce elements of competition, or just it didn't seem right to be put into the compensation plan.
Other questions? Mr. Jackson.
So the plan does not reward master's degree. However, the handbook still retains, no.
National board certification?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's right. The certification. So it's not directly linked to master's degree, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, they're two
Right,
different
that's-
things. Yeah.
Right, but I'm sorry, I was anticipating what you were saying, so I was asking that.
No,
Sorry.
I appreciate that because you helped me. Thanks, Mel.
So we have at least one new member here. Can you take us through the process that got us to this result, please? Not blow by blow, but the 2-minute overview.
Are you timing her?
Yes.
Do you have the
But
timer?
only in my
Do you have-
head.
Do you have the timer going?
Yes, right. We'll give a very brief synopsis, if that's all right. So there was a plan that was unveiled at the when Act 10 basically went away, or when Act 10 went into play, and the Steps and Lanes plan was taken away, the school board asked for an alternative plan. And at that time, there was a committee, I'm missing a few steps in there, but fast forwarding through it. There was a committee that was put into place to identify other ways to do compensation. And there was an examination of merit pay systems and other kinds of other systems. That committee worked together and came up with the career ladder, which was put into place end of 2015, I believe. And that plan was in place. As you heard, it'll be coming up on three years. This is the end of that plan. In the midst of that, I guess shortly after actually it was introduced, there were questions about how it would work and a little bit of feeling of discomfort with the plan or not sure it was the right plan for this district. And so a new committee was convened, made up of some of the same members. And that committee began to explore other alternatives to the career plan, or career ladder. Several options were explored, including some that included point systems and certainly an exploration of what other districts were doing across the state, in our own region here, and even nationally. It became very clear, as we put in the video, that there were just a lot of things that were trying to be accomplished with a career ladder and with subsequent plans that were examined. And so the committee, I think, looked at the core of what was important and where they needed to be in order to move forward. And the plan that we have tonight is the result of that work. So essentially, it's been 5 years, 4.5 years, I think, in the works.
In your view, thank you for that summary. In your view, what are the core things that this plan accomplishes? What does this do?
I think the fact that it is quite uniform, I think it offers people same opportunities, similar opportunities, and so it takes away some of the concern about where other people are, and it allows people to just focus for themselves. It also rewards retention. I mean, we heard over and over again that there are a lot of really great people committed to this district. And so that acknowledgement for staying with the district, for committing to the district, is important. So we believe very strongly that that retention incentive is an important way of doing that. And I think that because it is simple, that it will attract people from other districts, people who are coming to inquire about openings that we have here, because we know and have heard anecdotally and through our own HR here that isn't the case in all districts. There's a lot of changing going on, and so people were feeling confident that having something that is this straightforward will be good for attracting and retaining.
The retention incentive, I must be dense. I thought I knew until I was listening to you, but is that a one-time reward that comes after that, 5-year mark, or is that built into the salary subsequently?
It's added to their contract pay.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment, and I just want to applaud the committee for all of their hard work, because we put a pretty, tight time frame, and so I appreciate all the hard work on everybody's behalf.
I just have a comment to also thank you for all this, all the pain that you guys went through. I do believe in excellence, but I think that, like you said it there, it's difficult to say how do we really know what excellence is. I mean, how do you pay for excellence? What are things? I mean, it's very objective. So that's why I believe that this is probably the best thing that we've been coming with in a while, because, like you said, people is going to be focusing on doing what they're supposed to do, teaching. And also, what I see about this plan is that it's going to kind of heal what the staff has gone through, because again, it's taken away that competition in that you were put in this color, and I'm doing all this, and all the what happened with the career ladder. So I feel like being simple, like you say, is also gonna keep people in the district, or gonna attract people in the district, along with the insurance plan, most probably. So thank you so much. I really appreciate what you guys have done.
I guess, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just one of the other things when you were talking about retention, that is kind of a huge thing, that it sounds like the committee had identified that there were, it was 3 years and 10 years, that there was just kind of this big change in staff leaving, and, you know, especially after have a brand new teacher and you've worked with them for 3 years and we've mentored and we've done all these other things, and then they leave after 3 years. That's tough. And so it's nice to have something like this. It was one of the things I found really attractive about it, is that it made some additional incentive for those people that we've worked with and really developed a relationship with to stay.
Just wanted to maybe throw out or ask the question of next steps. And I see the handbook, or sorry, I'm on the handbook. I made a mistake.
That's next.
Next steps. Maybe next steps, what are they?
Well, the next step from the board perspective is that if we are comfortable with what has been presented tonight, then it comes back to us for a vote.
And will we be able to, one of the concerns with this timing, will we be able, it's a 1920.
And so the recommendation from the committee right now
year.
isn't that it's implemented for next year, it's implemented the year after.
Year after, yes, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm sorry. As I understand it, part of the press to get it done now, though, is to provide certainty for the folks that we're going to hire in. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, so that anybody hired in this year at their salary, they would know then for their, so what is this, the 18, 19, they would know how their increase would be calculated for the 19, 20 for their year 2 salary.
John?
Yeah, Dr. Onsager, maybe you can field this, or maybe you would pass it to someone in your staff, but I'm interested to hear the district's stance on how this plan might affect our ability to hire new staff.
And that's a question that I know Becky was looking at, so I will let Becky.
I don't think this is going to impact the hiring, because it still gives us the flexibility to look at comparables and bring people in where we think they should start. I think to whoever just made the point about being able to communicate how we pay staff will help us, because it's been really difficult last year, this year, to say, well, we're kind of in motion here, and this is what we're doing right now, but I think it's going to change. So I think to have just a really solid answer as to how people can look at what their pay might be, but I don't see this affecting the way we bring people in.
And just to clarify for the community's sake, for anybody watching, this plan mandates or predicts how teachers will be compensated from, or how pay will increase from year to year. But as you said, the hiring, or at the moment of hiring, the school district still has flexibility to hire at whatever the market demand is, or however you guys put that, whatever terms you use for that.
Yeah, that's correct.
And the committee's recommendation right now, the annual increase will be dependent on budget, dependent on negotiations and all of that. The only set amount is the retention increases at $2,000 starting your 4th year, $1,000 starting your 6th year, $2,000 starting your 11th year, and then $1,000 for every increment of 5 after that.
And so right now, the plan that we have in place has eventual caps on maximum salary, is that correct? I didn't see anything like that mentioned in this plan. Is that anything that the district has investigated in terms of, I don't know, somehow this becoming financially unviable, or do you guys feel confident?
I will let Erica talk about the financial sustainability of the plan.
Sure. We talked about this a lot as a committee when we looked at this structure as well as a number of other structures. So we were very careful to only identify certain amounts for those retention pieces because we recognize that what the state allocates for schools can change every 2 years. You know, where people fall in terms of their career, if you have a big hiring year and everybody stays, those retention incentives might eat up more of the funds available in any given year. So they wanted it to be very flexible in that those annual increases that everybody gets can vary from year to year. So if it's a year where there's fewer retention incentives and that allows for a larger increase for everybody else as a whole, there's the flexibility to do that. If it's a year where, you know, maybe the state caps how much money we can have and there's some retention incentives, that may mean that the annual increase for everybody is a little bit lower that year. So again, it was intended to be a framework that could be flexible with with whatever funds we do have available.
Okay.
So with that, I would feel that it is sustainable.
Okay.
And the committee really understood that school budgets have really changed a lot in the last 10 years, and it's not as reliable and steady as it maybe was in the past.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Cruz, did you want to say something? You had that look like you were going to say something. I look over there and you're sitting down. Yeah, we know.
I jumped up a couple times, but the last one was when we talked about how they would come into the plan. It's paid on the completion of the year. So, correct me if I'm wrong, we just level people over or leveling people over. That will set their contract for the upcoming year, and then after that, that's when the retention pieces kick in. So they don't start the new plan. They're under the new plan, but they don't get compensated and set for the salary until after the year's over. Because if we did it the other way, we'd be mixing both of them together, so it'd be multiple increases during that first year of this transition year. That's why it's that way. Does that make sense? Okay. There you go.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And I do, more than I can tell you, appreciate the 2-minute summary. So board members, this was the discussion portion of this tonight. We will bring it back up for a vote the next meeting. At the next meeting. If you have any questions or concerns that you did not raise tonight, that we need to prepare the staff for, sooner is always better to give people time to get the information that you all need. I also want to point out that one of the outcomes of the board retreat was a request to the administration for a checklist of information that was provided with each discussion or action item. And I note that that was provided tonight, and I found it extraordinarily helpful, so thank you. Next on the agenda is the employee handbook. Hello.
Hi.
What are you going to tell us about the employee handbook?
Well, you know, the good news is I think over time, I used to be up here and we would go through a lot.
Oh, I remember.
Yes, and we have really found, you know, we had less than 7% of our staff have anything that they wanted to see changed this year. I think that just speaks to people are getting comfortable. I think we're just kind of getting used to it, and so hopefully this is kind of the trend that it won't be, it'll be something that keeps diminishing as far as considerations. I did provide for you what Frank was just speaking of, that outline. So if there's any questions about what the process was, that was all outlined in there, and what next steps would be are in there. So if it's okay with you, I think what I'll do is just go through these recommended changes. sound okay?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay, all right. So what these are is, there were other suggestions. It's just, that, and we did have, it was an unusual year. Usually, there's only one ERC committee that reviews this, but because of the timing of the first review, that was under one ERC committee. Then we had board elections and the committee changed, so we did it again. And the good news is no changes were made from one committee to the next. So what happens is the ERC looks at those recommendations and listens to what administration might be recommending. They have their, the ERC has questions, they have their own input. And so what you see here is where the ERC, all members of the ERC have landed as far as making recommendations to you for consideration. So in the beginning of the handbook, in the preamble, what's in yellow is what would be added. And this is what we do. There were members on the Employee Relations Committee that felt it was important to state exactly what we do. So this is, it's nothing new, but it is really just identifying our process. The next one is in section 20.35, and Steve, you kind of talked about that tonight with the National Board Certification. We do have $1,500 that we pay in addition to anyone that holds these certification if they work in the areas identified. It was what we talked about as a committee this year is there may come a time, right now everyone is in full-time status, but there may come a time when someone maybe is working in part of the National Board Certification area and maybe in a different area that is not part of the board, National Board Certification area. So we recommended that we would prorate that $1,500 by FTE that would be work done in the National Board Certification area. So they were 50% speech and language pathologist and 50% learning strategist. They would get 50% of the $1,500 because that's the part that's in the National Board Certification recognition. The next one is the employee workday. We did have a number of comments about the employee workday, and our recommendation would be that we add a line so that it's clear to all staff that administration can require an arrival and a departure time. And I shared with the committee that this year there were times when staff, there were some staff in a building that was actually, they were leaving before the buses were even out of the parking lot. And that's, I mean, we really feel like we need our staff in the buildings until all students are gone. But we have what we call a professional day. So if there is, if they have no responsibilities, either with students or families or meetings or staff, they can leave after the students are gone. Then there are a couple buildings where they did implement an arrival time, and again, that was related primarily to the arrival of certain buses. And we have spent, we haven't, Karen has spent a lot of time looking at bus routes and seeing if there's anything we can do so that some of these buses could get to the buildings later, and it's really hard, and it's probably not going to happen. So there still may be need for some of the buildings to ask staff to be there earlier. I mean, when I say earlier, we're talking at, in the hallways about 7:45 is what they were requiring. So it's not like it's real early in the morning. Lunch breaks, again, this was a clarification. The statute was always referenced in this section, but we felt because there was concern about lunch breaks this year in particular, we just wanted to even write the words out to indicate that it is by statute that all educators do get a 30-minute duty-free lunch. The next section, section 30.50, the part-time professional educators, this is really ancient. And this was before we had a good means in Skyward. So we just came up with this formula, hoping to figure out how we could, I mean, it was the best way we had at the time to figure out compensation for a part-time employee educator. Well, now with Skyward, we can go in and make a calendar specific to everybody and the days they work, the hours they work, and that very accurately calculates then salary, and it's so linked to the pay system that we don't have to worry about generating a formula that isn't 100% accurate. So it's a recommendation that that section just be eliminated. Section 40.30 is about the ID badges that we all are expected to wear. And in here, we're just clarifying again something that we do, but Raptor was added since the last review of the handbook, so we just want to make it known to employees they too have to go through the Raptor system and have once a year to have their ID checked. Section 50.55 would be a new section, and this was the recommendation of the policy committee for you to consider in the handbook, and it's the non-retaliation policy, which I guess the timing is just about perfect because you haven't even seen the policy that you're going to see a little bit later on the agenda, but if you approve that policy, then that would be what would go in here. Just speaking to retaliation among staff members, but also parents and the retaliation, that's prohibited for them as well. Section 60.05 is sick leave, and this is primarily removing the ability to use sick leave for domestic partner. And the reason we recommended this is because it's no longer legal to cover them for insurance. When same-sex marriage became legal in Wisconsin, you can now be covered in that, you know, the word spouse would apply to all here, which would be the sick leave as well. However, if something happened to a partner and they were not married, there's just such flexibility that we wanted to make sure we had writing in here that that can still be considered by the district administrator in special situations. And then educators substituting for other educators. This is the time of year where unfortunately we are calling on our staff almost daily, or we are calling on our staff daily because of the number of classrooms we're not filling with substitutes. And so we just wanted to make it clear that as much as possible, we're doing this on a rotating basis. But it does have something to do with, especially like at the high school, they rotate in during their prep time. So it depends on who's available, so it can't be always 100% rotation. You do have to consider the time that people are available. But checking with all buildings, they do try to spread this out so it isn't always the same people. So that's what I have, the committee would have for this year. Are there any questions I can answer?
Y'all are stunned in the submission already. It's only 8:30, folks. We're just warming up.
I guess
Steve.
I'm still a little, I'm not clear on the domestic partner thing because it would seem to me that whether you're taking sick leave for a spouse or domestic partner, so the reason we're saying remove domestic partner is because our insurance program does not allow domestic partner to be
It's
part
one
of.
of the, right.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons.
Yes.
But if I was an employee and I was taking sick leave, whether I was married or not married, but I had a partner, wouldn't I still ask my administrator whether, hey, I need to take sick leave? So does it, no?
No,
I can
sick
take
leave
sick
doesn't-
leave without telling my
That's correct.
administrator?
Correct.
Interesting.
Sick leave does not need prior approval. Our personal days need prior approval.
Okay.
But sick days, they basically reported themselves.
Interesting. Okay.
Up to a
Well,
number.
yeah,
up
there
to a
might be,
certain
well,
number.
they still report it themselves. What Mike is pointing out is that if they're gone for 3 days in a row, we're going to be asking some questions because that generally generates the question about whether or not it might be FMLA qualifying, but they're still entering the absence the employee is at that point.
So in this situation, would an employee go to the district administrator? So that's Tim, right?
Right.
To see if it's okay to take.
Well, when we talked about this, I think it would be more in the area of someone having an injury. Maybe they're hospitalized, or they have to go to doctor appointments on a regular basis. In the language, I could do that for a spouse. So if same-sex marriage, they could do it for their spouse. If they're not married, then we would ask that they check with the district administrator, because then Tim could ask those kind of questions. You know, is it for an injury? Is it for an ongoing treatment? It isn't necessarily, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And, you know, to be honest, Steve, because they don't ask permission, we don't really know when they take a sick day. What we know is they are either calling in because they're ill themselves, or a family member is ill, they have some type of appointment, or a family member has an appointment.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And I think if I get the tone of your questioning, Steve, I think the expectation that you'd express is that approval wouldn't be unreasonably withheld.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, does that match up with how you would approach this, Tim?
I can say that it's very rare
Tim hardly ever says no.
that I deny it.
No, and I mean that as a compliment, because he really does put family, friends, partners. I mean, that's all important to all of us.
Can I just ask that, is there a reason why you have to specifically call out domestic partners? Could that wording be something other than that, like use of sick time for illness or appointments for individuals other than those listed above?
The reason that it is probably called out, and you definitely could recommend a change in the wording that we would keep, was simply because we were removing the words domestic partner throughout that section. But yes, you could change that words.
Do you have something specific in mind, or?
Well, no, I just think that not mentioning domestic partners at all, and then all of a sudden saying like, well, you can use it for domestic partners if you get, it just makes it seem like that we're making this, we're singling out domestic partners, when really that's not what the intent is. I'm guessing.
We could just simply say that sick leave, sick time for illnesses or appointments for relationships not mentioned in this section.
Right.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Are there other questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you particularly for your patience in working with two versions of the ERC and your skill in getting this through both of them.
Yeah, that's no problem.
And the action item checklist.
And yes.
Yeah, I was going to say
I think
the
I was
same
the
thing.
first
This
one.
We'll get you a gold star.
Okay, thank you.
Put that
I
on the
think this
agenda.
is so useful, the way it was, for each one of the presentation, how you call it again, the action items, is very, very useful.
Yeah, I really am grateful that you've promulgated this, Tim. It's a super helpful way to figure out what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the handbook will be back on the next agenda for a vote by the board to approve. Next on the agenda, cameras.
You may want to make it clear for a member of the two-step.
Make it clear for it. I don't know why
Because you.
Don't mind us. Go ahead.
That's all right.
We're just bickering.
Like a married couple.
domestic.
Well, good evening. I am talking about cameras once again. Just as a 2-minute synopsis. Last March, we, Cal and the security team, safety team, gave a proposal on ALICE framework. ALICE is our safety protocol that we implemented last year. Along with that came the discussion of cameras and how that aligns with the ALICE framework. So that was last year in March. And since March up until this point, we've been through a series of discussions, presentations, anywhere from the board to the facilities meeting. Our last time I came up with Calvin and Mike, I believe, we were asking the board, should we move forward with getting cost estimates to add internal security cameras to 100% coverage in all of our school buildings? At that point, the board said, yes, please proceed with getting quotes. So we did that. We did an RFP. We had 5 vendors give us proposals. We got those back. Erica, Cal, and I met, and we discussed those proposals. They came back in a wide range of designs, as we anticipated. Lots of fluctuations between the amount of cameras, the design of those cameras, video management systems, which is the actual interface that we use to kind of export video, and in cost. So the cost ranges from $169,000 all the way to $361,000. So there's a wide range of costs in there, and there's reasons for that. The amount of cameras, the sophistication of the analytic systems. So we wanted to bring that information to you tonight. There's still work to be done in the RFP. So next week, a group of us, staff and administrators, are going to be bringing in 3 vendors to give us more information, some more rationale as to why did you choose the design you chose, why did you choose the cameras that you chose, give us a demo of the video management system, those types of things. It's an expensive investment, and so we want to make sure that we have the right system. We want to make sure that it meets our needs. We want to make sure that it's going to connect with our infrastructure, all of those things. But tonight, we're asking for your approval to move forward with it, and the cost up to $360,000. So that's why I'm here tonight.
It's a good reason.
This is under discussion.
This is a discussion. Yeah, this is on here as a discussion item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was discussion action.
No, this is discussion, so it's a 2-step, so it would be, he's previewing what the actual, if it's moved to.
So if I were to come back, I would
If it's moved to discussion action, what the action that administration is requesting, that the board approves spending up to $361,889 to install cameras in all the schools.
So on here, it mentions that you received 5 responses?
Yes.
And are you bringing 3 in because those are the 3 that it's down to?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Steve.
Paul, thanks for the info and for the action item checklist.
Yeah, no problem.
So somewhere in here, and I can't remember where I saw it, that there may be potential funding from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Have we investigated what that might look like? The casual.
Sort of.
Erica.
As you recall, the state passed Act 143 a couple of months ago, and that was, well, there was a lot to that regarding requirements for schools on safety measures, some of the reporting we need to now do to the state on our safety drills. But a big part of that was also an approval of $100 million for schools for safety grants. And we have received information regarding that application process and things that are eligible to submit, and security cameras are one of the things that are eligible to be applied for. We don't know exactly how they're going to allocate, how they're going to approve what amounts for what schools. I have reason to believe, I'm pretty confident that any school that applies will get something, and just given the very quick turnaround, I mean, these applications are due, the end of this month, I think? Real soon, and they're going to be awarding these grants, I believe, in June. So My gut feeling is that it's going to be some sort of an equitable process on how they allocate funds, as long as it's for something that qualifies. Because you can't do a super competitive grant with a turnaround of just a couple weeks when you have all 425 school districts applying. So I don't know how much it's going to be, but I have some confidence that we will at least get something. I feel pretty comfortable, regardless of what that amount is, that we can work that cost into our budget next year, just given the conversations we've had around the additional state resources that we know we're going to have, in addition to our regular funding that we had planned on in our budget projections. So again, like Paul said, it's a pretty big investment. It's something we've been talking about for quite a number of years. School safety continues to be a high priority for us and all school districts. And I feel like we're in a really good place. We've done the research. These grant funds are a very realistic potential, and we're in a place in our budget next year that we can accommodate the project and get it done throughout the course of the summer.
Jolie?
You have another one?
No, I do, wait, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I think that we talked about that way before, like last year or something. When you say research, do we have any research about how cameras really impact the safety? Like, if that helps in any event? I remember we talked a little bit about that. Did you know anything about it?
Specific like research on it, no, we haven't gotten any research on it. I think what it comes down to is when things occur in our buildings, incidents happen in our buildings, and the fire or police come up to my crews as a principal and say, hey, who pulled this fire alarm? What happened in this bathroom? Whatever the case may be. We don't have any evidence. Essentially, I look at the security cameras as giving our staff the tools they need to be able to do their jobs, their investigation in an efficient manner. So Todd Babici, he doesn't have any tools to work with right now. So incidents that happen in our buildings, he just doesn't have anything to go off of. So that would be one case. It also aligns with our ALICE framework. So an intruder comes into the building, we have no cameras, nothing for our local PD to tap into, to look to see where that intruder might be while they're coming to our buildings. So that's kind of like that ALICE safety perspective. But then, like, I think more like on a day-to-day basis, it's really providing our staff with the tools that they need.
Yeah, I was just going to add that when we talk about like an absolute worst case scenario, if we had a situation in one of our buildings where there was a violent intruder, having the ability for a dispatcher or as police are arriving on scene to look into that building and identify the location potentially of where that person could be, it can save time. And one of the things we've learned is that even seconds can save lives in those kinds of situations. So is there research about the effectiveness? I doubt it. In fact, you could probably even argue that the amount of money schools are spending on some of these initiatives, you know, we hope that we never need it for those purposes. But like Paul said, beyond the most extreme situation, there is use in this investment to help support some of the other things that we're doing in our buildings.
So, oh, sorry. I had just a question about the 362,000. Is that all in our cost as well? So, like, do we have servers and things like that? So that's an all-in. That's an all-in cost.
Correct,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Could you give us a preview of the three proposals, not in depth, but of the three proposals that you guys are still considering? Do they vary widely in the equipment or services or installation?
It mainly comes down to the quantity of cameras.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's really the big cost. But there are some also differences in terms of like servers. So a couple of vendors have proposed a centralized system, meaning that all the video comes back through our fiber to a central location here. Others have proposed site-based storage, meaning that there's servers in individual buildings. We're wanting to hear the pros and cons of that.
Yeah.
Why did you propose this as opposed to the other one? Obviously, there's a higher cost in having more servers in more buildings as opposed to maybe two servers here at a central location. So I'd say those two are probably the main differences in cost. Aside from that, all the services and installation, they don't break that down by line item. That all kind of just gets bundled in as installation and materials.
Okay.
But I'd say cameras and storage.
Great, thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, a couple things. One of the things that you haven't brought up, but is in your proposal, is that it can minimize bullying, and I think that deterrent effect is as valuable as some of the stuff that you mentioned. My other point, or my other question is, when this comes back in 2 weeks, will you have a better idea of what the number is? Because it feels odd to be approving 160 to 360. I mean, it's fine if that's what we have to do, but will you have
Yeah, I'm sorry. That
a
was
better idea
that was
about
by
that?
my fault thinking that was a.
That's
that was
okay.
an action item here.
I'm not trying to
yes.
call you out.
Yeah. No, next week we will have those numbers come back.
And you'll have it narrowed down then by the time it comes back to the board.
Yeah,
That'll be more comfortable.
absolutely.
But we didn't want to wait, because if we would have waited till then for the first two-step process, it wouldn't potentially be approved until the end of June. And if we're gonna do this project, we need to get moving on it first part of June to make sure the vendors, and we start installing throughout the summer.
Because after we select the vendor, it just takes time for project management, order the materials, get the materials on site. So after we choose a vendor, that will take some time.
Okay. Thank you.
You were mentioning that there's a possibility to doing it by phases. So do one part first and so on. Which will be the priority? High school, starting with high school, if it has
All
to be
phases,
done by
I'm sorry,
phases.
yeah, okay,
I'm
gotcha. Our recommendation is to do all sites, but in the event that we would have to break those into phases, I would say high school would be first, probably followed by River Bluff, and then the 3 elementaries.
So follow up on that. You are recommending that we do all buildings, yes? And I'm assuming that there's some cost savings to just bringing a vendor out one time and doing the whole
Yes.
thing rather than, let's do the high school, okay, come back in 2 years and.
Yep.
So there's
Project
that's
management
significant,
fees, yep,
Yeah.
bulk ordering, all those types of things, yeah.
Is there any discussion about, you know, if our priority is the high school and then the middle school, if the cost is largely the cameras, is there any discussion about maybe there would be more cameras in certain places that are deemed more urgent, or are we thinking 100% coverage everywhere?
Yeah, I would say initially we're going in with 100% coverage.
Okay.
And that seems to be the trend when we had vendors come in to do a walkthrough. They said this is definitely the way that districts are going, is 100% coverage. So we haven't discussed if we had to pick and choose different areas. We haven't had that discussion yet, but we could have that discussion if we got to that point.
And 100% coverage excludes locker rooms and bathrooms.
Right.
In classrooms and offices, yeah?
Yep.
No?
Just checking.
Thought you might.
I have sort of a question, I guess. Has there been discussion about what happens if a parent, like, if a student comes home and says, so-and-so punched me in the hallway today, but no one saw it? And then the angry parent calls the school and says, well, I know you have video cameras, let me see the video. Like, is there going to be a process in place for, like, a policy around what parents are allowed to see or not see? And does that open the district up to some sort of, a bunch of legal expense because some parent is angry that no one was there watching her kid get punched?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We have discussed it at the table here. We do have a policy in place. I think should we choose to move forward with this, we will have to revisit that policy, minimally just to kind of look it over, make any tweaks. I did take a look at it a couple weeks ago, and for the most part, I think we're in a good starting spot. It does reference all of our state statutes in terms of privacy. It does allow parents to request certain footage, but we'll just have to kind of clear that up a little bit. Make sure that our process is very clear and transparent to parents. and that our school administrators know exactly what, to do. Currently, there's one person that pulls the video footage. That person works in the technology department.
Okay.
Everything is documented. Everything is stored in a space where only those people that request it can see it. I believe he copies you, Tim, on it as well. So it's a very standardized approach currently, but we will have to look at that. If we get more cameras, inevitably we'll get more requests.
Anything else, anyone? All right, so thank you very much. This will come back on the agenda in 2 weeks for a vote.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda are a series of first readings of policies. The way that we do policies, much of what we do here is through a two-step approval process. So there's a presentation, discussion, then the item comes back at the next meeting for an approval. Or I should say for a vote, which probably results in approval, but not necessarily. So next on the agenda are 4 policies, and is it Judy who will be presenting the policies?
Present half of them, and my friend Becky present the other one.
Will we get more Becky tonight?
Since the 2 of them are retiring at the end of June, we're trying to get as much
Their time as possible.
Yes.
This is going to have to last us.
Okay, we'll start out with Start Technical College Now. You may recall a policy called Early College Credit Program. This is the sister of that one. That one was where students can take college credits from a university or from a college, and this program, this policy is about taking technical college credits. So as a junior or senior, students can apply to their principal to see if they can take a class at a technical school. There's some parameters around that. It would have to be a course that we don't already offer. But if that's approved, and they have to follow a pretty rigorous timeline then also, which is spelled out in the guidelines. If that's approved, and it's not a course that is a course that we offer, the district would be required to pay for that course for the students.
Discussion. Kathleen?
I noticed, reading the legislation, that in point 5, it gives the board the authority to tell a student no if it's an undue financial burden to the district. Do you know who would look at, maybe we say, no, that's too much money for whatever, but who kind of oversees that or decides that, I guess?
We don't know.
Okay.
I would think that would be a determination that we would make.
I just didn't know if there'd be like an appeal then from, it's just not very clearly defined in the legislation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It did look like there was an appeal process, though, if I read this correctly. Yeah, that there was an appeal process that then the student could go to DPI.
Okay.
And appeal it.
I think the vagueness of the statute is just because what is an undue financial burden for one district may just be a drop in the bucket for another one.
Right.
And so that's a determination that we would make at the, here.
And if it's one student in one course, that's one thing. If it's all of our juniors some year, that becomes a huge impact on.
Right.
And that's the point at which we would hear about it, right? I mean, otherwise, it's not going to make it to the board. The administration's going to say,
right,
yes, you can do this, unless every junior decides that we may have to say, time for the board to talk.
Right.
Other questions or comments on this policy? I'm sorry,
And
Allison.
then, did I read this right, that they the students that do this and they get approved to take the class, do they earn high school credit simultaneously?
This is not a dual credit.
It's not dual credit,
So they would
okay.
earn college or technical college credit for the course. So that runs parallel. We have dual credits where they can take they get high school and college
Right.
credits at the same time, and there's no cost to us for that. But our educators have to deliver the curriculum for the technical school. That's becoming a little bit more difficult because they want our educators who are delivering their curriculum to also have some extraordinary number of on-the-job hours. I can't remember, 4,400, some number of hours, and I can look that up for you, where they're actually doing that kind of work. So for instance, Brad Seehafer has a dual credit welding class, and they would now want Brad not only to be qualified to teach their welding course, but also to have some authentic experience in this extraordinary number of hours to deliver their course. And so I think there will be, we'll see a change in the number of dual credit courses we can offer because of that new expectation for our educators to be qualified to deliver the course.
I'm a little confused on Allison said too, because here it says on section C, in the end, the pupil is eligible to receive both high school and technical college credit for courses successfully completed at the technical college.
If it's a dual credit course, yes.
Oh, okay, so it depends if it's a dual
Right,
or not. Okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
What this one is saying that this policy is saying that it's a course that isn't offered at our school that they could take. And they are interested in pursuing it at Madison College, then we have the obligation to pay for that for them.
I have another question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And it's regarding as, so how the student know about just independently, somebody mentioning to him or her, or is there's any notion of it when, by the time they're in high school, that their college credit that they can earn?
We're required to make notice of it annually. It probably won't be at the top of the page. But we have an obligation to let families know that this is an option.
Kathleen?
Just a question off. So if it's not a credit at the high school and as a college credit, do you think most students would be deterred because they also have to transport to the class and back?
Correct.
Do you see that then
Yes.
as?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Transportation, we would not provide transportation.
Right, but I mean, it eats a good chunk of their day,
Yeah.
which means they're not earning the high school credits that maybe they need to graduate.
They could take it at night.
But
MATC
sure.
offers, different kind of schedules than we have. But that is for both of these, both at the university and at the technical school, that is a barrier.
Anything else on this policy, Yo? All right, let's move to the next one, please.
Okay, the next one is A22 part-time open enrollment. This one is also pretty dramatic for us. This allows students to take up to 2 classes at any time and open enroll for that class in any other institution. So they could choose to go to Edgerton for their fabulous something. They could go to McFarland. They could go to, an online class. So they could request either JEDI, which holds all of our courses, but up to 2 courses at a time, we have no reason to tell them no. We have few reasons to tell them no. Tim mentioned earlier tonight that there was the first course that we've developed is an online Phi-Ed course, which seems ironic that you would do an online course. But we've had a lot of requests for that. For instance, families going into the high school are interested in taking a world language, a music, and another elective, and you can't fit all of those electives and Phi-Ed into your class, into your course schedule. And so, interestingly, the parents of children that are in this position find Phi-Ed would be the best one to do online. We offer online Phi-Ed through JEDI. However, we still have to pay for that. If we offer online Phi-Ed through our high school, that doesn't cost us anything additional to offer that. So we've worked with Bob Empey, who's the chair of the Phi-Ed department, one of our physical education teachers. He's done a lot of work on this, and we have a pretty solid draft. It has not gone totally public yet, but a pretty solid draft about what constitutes an online Phi-Ed class. But so students could choose that. They can choose Norwegian. We don't offer Norwegian. If Norwegian is available someplace else, that's a possibility. Again, Kathleen, that to get to Edgerton for Norwegian or to McFarland is a barrier for this. Online, not so much. This one has some pretty tight timelines that the families are expected to adhere to and to follow. And it is not the counselor's job or my job to invite people in to follow this. Again, we would notice it every year that it exists and it's available, but there's some, in the guidelines, there's some pretty specific timelines that are needed to be followed for this.
Are there any questions about this policy? Julie? Anyone? Thank you. Hello again.
Hi.
So next on the agenda is policy 604, retaliation. I'm sorry, non-retaliation.
Non-retaliation. This one has just been updated. We just felt that it was a little bit more understandable. We didn't really change the meaning of, you still cannot retaliate. And then this is what I spoke of when we were talking about the handbook. We feel it's important to put this in the employee handbook. It will also need to stay in the regular board documents online because it does reference students and parents. So parents would have to have access online.
Questions or comments? Yeah, I think it's important to keep this one in the policies, even if it might be a little bit duplicative.
Yeah.
This is an important value for our district,
Yeah.
and I am very comfortable with putting it everywhere we can. If there is nothing on policy 604, and there does not appear to be, can we move to 705, extracurricular groups and activities, please?
Yes, I worked with Mel Dow on this policy, so I will tell you that some sections of this were quite old, where he wasn't even sure where some of those came from. So this is a lot of updating, and this was written with an eye on all activities. It's not just athletics, so it's athletics, any other activities that fall basically in the additive schedule. So basically we removed language that did not pertain any longer, or that some of this information would be information that students and families would get, but they no longer get it just by reading the policy. It becomes part of Mel's program with staff and students where they have to sign off on a handbook. He has a separate handbook that they use. There is an orientation that I believe all families and students have to attend, and much of the material is provided there. Much of the material that they have to sign off on is provided there. So it just no longer relies on a written document because there's other ways that this information is communicated to families.
I just wanted to mention that I wasn't able to open the proposed draft. I don't know if anybody else had that issue. There's a dot missing before the PDF, so I could download it but not open it.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Oh,
So you
you
didn't
could-
have a
okay.
chance to review this?
Not the proposed draft.
You can see the red line.